Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another episode of Xtreme Memories right here on the Wrestling Chatter channel, exclusively on YouTube. You can catch new episodes on the 15th and 30th of the month. Be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Guys, the more subscribers we have, the more great content we can bring to you. We want to thank everybody for supporting us here at Xtreme Memories. We've had a lot of great guests, a lot of great episodes. And today should be no exception. My name is Kris Kloss. I am the host. And my guest today was one of the originals, not right at the beginning, but again, in the infancy of XPW. This one should be interesting, ladies and gentlemen, because, you know, what we do here is Xtreme Memories is we talk very candidly about our true personal lives, our personal lives, and it's always fun to kind of dive into the personal lives of guys that maybe were a little bit more, let's say, kayfabe. You know, you didn't really get to see their personality. So my guest at this time is, with no exception whatsoever, maybe the quintessential example of what I just mentioned. He is the very mysterious Tool. Tool, welcome to Xtreme Memories. Yeah. All right, Tool. Well, let's just get right into it. Tell us about your experience. And before we do that, when did you get started in pro wrestling? Well, that's fascinating.
Well, first of all, my name is Gary Key. And I started wrestling way back in the late 89, 90s, 1990. And I worked for different promotions all over. And some, you know, it's been a really, and actually Tool was kind of the end of my career. And to be honest with you, I think I was I should have, you know, hung up the boots a little bit earlier. Even though I even continued to wrestle after XPW, you know, it was just the business had kind of changed, and I was kind of like, you know, I wasn't really happy with what I was seeing. So
I see. I remember that. Now, let's just officially do this. Welcome, Gary Key. Gary Key to Xtreme Memories. This was the guy, ladies and gentlemen, that was behind the mask of the very mysterious Tool. Not now, because of Xtreme Memories, not so mysterious any longer. Gary Key, let's officially welcome you to Xtreme Memories. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for starting to answer that, because that's a question I have, wanting to know like how you got started. Because like you just said, when you were Tool, you were already the seasoned veteran in the business. You know, for this new upstart company, XPW, on television, based in Southern California, which is where you were based prior to XPW. I personally remember you, Gary, as one of the guys that was instrumental, kind of connected to that group in SoCal, Billy Anderson, the great Jesse Hernandez. And you guys were kind of like working with putting the shows together for the WWE, WWF, when they would come for house shows at the LA Sports Arena. So I remember you there, and I remember seeing you at Long Beach, California, when they taped WWF Superstars, and you were a jobber. And I want to say you were in there with the Head Shrinkers. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm still feeling the pain from that match. But
that's right. And I remember when we were there, it was like, oh, these guys are getting squashed hard, you know, but I remember like couple months later when they returned, now I was really recognizing you. You would be ringside at the ringside table at WWE house shows, timekeepers table and all that.
Wait.
Ring announcing. Jesse would be reffing. Wow, look at that. Holy.
That's an original.
Oh my gosh.
Hogan, all the old school guys hit this pad.
Woo!
And I used to have a whole full set, but because of my schools and people taking them, giving them away, this is my last one. So this is to me, very special, and I'm going to keep it, and I'm not giving this away to anybody. And you can see this came off the actual ring that went Southern California and the whole Midwest. So,
I'm literally like stunned right now.
well, you know, people come up and say, "Oh, no, WWF. That was the old school." You know, and Vince, it was WWF when Vince's dad owned it, and it went WWF. And the WWE, I kind of follow some of it a little bit. There are some people I know that still work, or no, they've switched over to the other promotion.
Right.
But it's that to me, it's WWF.
You know, it's hard for even
little panda bear needs a body slam. That's what needs to happen.
You know, I agree. Like even to this day, like I'm used to saying WWE, but it doesn't feel right, especially when we're talking about times when it was called WWE.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe let me ask you this: when they had to change the name, would you have rather them changed it to WWE or rather them change it back to WWF?
Well, you know what? By that time, everybody had computers, and they were all smart. You know, so it's worldwide wrestling. It's entertainment.
Right. It is. Yeah.
Entertainment. That's what it is.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, I think Vince did a good decision. You know, and he drugged that lawsuit on for years.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And it was just out of spite. And then eventually, I guess he just had a thing, and he come out and he goes, "Nope, we're sports entertainment now."
Right. Right.
You know, so. You know, and he could have saved a lot of money and a lot of time in lawyers if he would have just caved in earlier, but he didn't want to.
Right, he didn't want to, and that's amazing. That I'm bummed that you said you only had one left because I was gonna.
Well, I'd probably hook you up, Kris. Because
oh man, well if you can, you know, I have a good little trophy. I'll maybe post it one day. As I have from Huntington Beach. Oh, you were on that show too with
Bash at the Beach. WCW?
Yeah, but
I did a run-in on Van Vader.
Yes, you did. And that was Bash at the Beach, 95, Huntington Beach. And after the event was over, everybody rushed to this like bleachers they had in the back. You could barely see them. They had WCW, Slim Jim, and Bash at the Beach banners. And luckily I got this giant Bash at the Beach banner. So I'll post that, fans, and maybe you could tell us what's cooler, the banner I have, but I think your turnbuckle is cooler.
Well, you know what? There's so many memorabilia I could have got. I mean, Hacksaw Jim, the ring crew would go pick that up from Home Depot and make it there before the show. You know, the Fuji sticks, they carried all that. You know, as you know, and a lot of people, my friends, came to me. Some people I knew, and they were wrestlers, and they would go, everybody knows I worked on the ring crew. Okay. And everybody, I don't work on the ring crew. I'm a wrestler. And I go, well, no, any mechanic knows his tools, you know, and that's the bottom line. And I learned this lesson from Jesse Hernandez and Billy Anderson.
Right.
You know, we would set up the ring. I would wrestle. Jesse would referee and Billy would do the ring announcing.
Right.
And I mean, and we would get 3 paydays. And not only that, but what I think one thing that did was all the big names, they would see me working on the ring crew, doing the timekeeping and jobbing. And when we had TV tapings, when they'd come in and all the other we call them enhancement talent now, when they would come in and they would sit there, I got more respect, way more respect than any of those guys. I don't care how good they were.
Right.
Because all the big names knew I was paying my dues.
Yeah.
You know, and I knew every end of the business. And that's when I ran my schools and when I ran my promotions. We drew very well at my promotions. You know, I did a lot of fundraising stuff. And that's because, and Jesse instilled that in me. You know every bit of this business. And we were on a Tom Shea show. I think was it? Yeah, Steve Gatorwolf tour.
Okay.
And if you did a Steve Gatorwolf tour, you paid your dues right then. If it lasted more than 5 days, you paid your dues. But anyway, I got hurt, so I was easily, instead of just sitting there not making any money, I was actually able to go do the ring announcing. You know, and that's just experience that I gained through working for all the stuff. And I told you the one time that Jesse and it was a WWF show, and it was a dark, it wasn't TV. So I was wrestling the first match.
Okay.
And what happened, as soon as I wrestled the first match, Jesse was way up in the top where the music and everything done, because you got to cue the music. Because back then we didn't have internet, so you couldn't smarten the people up. You couldn't tell them whose music's going to play.
Right.
So we had to be up there to kind of do it for them. So I do my match. I run in. I throw warm-ups on. I got my boots still on. I get everything up, and I'm running up the bleachers to go up. This is sports arena. Back there, remember they had
yes.
Yeah.
All the way at the top of the arena
yes, that's where you had to go for the audio. So I'm running up those stairs, and the next thing you know, here's Jesse running back down the stairs, and we're like, look at each other, and he's refereeing the next match. So, and it's like I said, we got 3 paydays every show.
Wow.
And we all were paid the same. So it did, I was getting 3 times more money than anybody, and I was building a huge respect with the big talent,
Yeah.
And
I remember talking to you about that. Like, so when you came into XPW, because Darren Dynamite D, he was big on that too. Like, he would tell the guys that were starting, like, hey, you got to put the ring together. You got to offer to take it down.
Yeah. Oh.
And I remember, like, in the early days of XPW, that's what I was doing too. And then the only reason I didn't do it later on is because when I would get there, Rob and Kevin would be like, Kris, no, don't do that. We need to go over the script though. Okay.
Yeah.
And then all that stuff. So, but yes, the early days, it was like, man, we were there till like 1, 2 in the morning at some of those places, loading everything back in. But that's great, man. And it's good for young guys to hear you say that, because that is important. And if you
there's times you're going to be hurt and you can't work. And I've been booked on shows just because I can do other stuff. Because promoters, when they're booking, especially if they're not the top talent, they're not the big names, they're going to look to save money. And so, this guy's very valuable. And I'll tell you a story too. A lot of guys. And I think this happened a lot in that promotion. A lot of guys started believing their own publicity, and that's a big no-no in wrestling. Don't believe your own publicity.
Yeah.
And this is something that was told to me by Kerry Von Erich, Texas Tornado. We were doing, I think we're doing Tom Shea shows up and down the West Coast and into Utah, and this is a week before he committed suicide. After we get off this tour, he committed suicide a week later. But he told me a lot of stuff that was just, he says, you're over. And I'm telling every guy out there, you're over, unless you're the promoter's son, you're over because the promotion puts you over.
Right.
A promotion can put you over and make you, you look at all the big names. There are some guys out there, technical skills are horrible. But because of where they were put, how the promotion pushed them, they got over.
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing to go out there and do all these moves and stuff and get over and pop the crowd and whatever. But if the promotion's not behind you and they're not pushing you, they can kill you in an instant.
Oh, easily.
And we've seen that happen. It's just look at the Brawl for All, WWF. Remember that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
The winner wasn't supposed to win.
Right. Right.
Yes, and you see what happened there.
Yeah, I was actually there at the pond the night that Steve Williams, Dr. Death, got that surprise knockout, and I was right there ringside. Yeah. Yeah,
and so and they're back there scratching their heads, and they're like, and you saw the winner. What's it, Bill Gunn or what's it?
Yeah, Bart Gunn.
Yeah. His career right after that.
Yeah, it was crazy.
He wasn't. They didn't expect him to win.
And you can get, like you said, you can do a high spot and you can get, a big pop for one moment in one show. And then you go to the back, it's just business as usual. Like, as long as, if you can get pops on your own, good luck, because you're just going to get a few scattered here and there. But if after you get that pop and you go in the back and the promotion's still not going to get behind you, and you're not consistently getting put over by the promotion, what's the point of those good pops? And you're also not necessarily a team player at that moment, because
exactly
the storylines have to match. My storyline has to make sense for this storyline over here, because we might feud in the future, all this stuff. It's all connected.
Yeah. And if they have no use for you, I mean, they're not going to put you over. So I mean, you know, and look, when Shawn Michaels came back for his last time, I mean, I'm sad he didn't get over.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't think they set him up right. It was just like when, who was that? Went to WCW. Bret Hart, when he went to WCW, they didn't put him over. They didn't. That guy is one. I mean, I have guys up here that I think are technical wrestlers, and those are the guys I really like. It's like Bret Hart, Ric Flair. They could go out there in the middle of the ring and work a toe hold for 30 minutes, and the audience is on the edge of their seat. That's wrestling.
Yeah.
You know, and when he went to WCW, they made him a referee his first match. They killed him off.
Unreal.
Yeah.
And unreal. With the money they spent, it's like you'd think you'd want to get something worth the dollar you spent. And that was the worst thing they could have. They brought him out as a referee. Yeah.
I mean, that was a huge talent wasted. You know, and it's
and a missed opportunity for WCW. Completely.
Yeah, I agree. You know, and they could have worked a whole program around him, and because like I said, that guy, he could work it out. And see, that's the other thing too. So when I had my schools, you know, I'm not a huge fan of the extreme wrestling. I'm probably get heat for that, but I'm going to be right out front. I'm not. And back, the old guys call that cheap heat.
Oh, of course.
I'll give you an example. Is when my students, when I had my schools, they'd come up and they would go, "Hey, I saw this. I want to do this, and you know, I want to come here, and you know, this is what I saw, and I want to." And I said, "You know what? You get in that ring, and you don't touch each other for 20 minutes, and you entertain me. That's wrestling."
Right.
And I think that's what we're missing in this business. Big time.
I agree. And
we don't, you know, it's kind of like you go out and you have the show Married with Children. Okay. You got Married with Children. Okay, let's get rid of the whole cast and recast it. It's not going to work.
Right.
You know, you got that chemistry is not there anymore. And I think that's a huge thing missing today. You know,
I do too. And I think there is a market for it. I mean, actually when you came into XPW, and I remember like seeing you, we really met for the first time to get to know each other there. And I'm like, wow, I can't believe you're here. I can't believe you're going to be this Tool character. So I remember growing up, knowing who you were, going to these shows. And then when you got this character, which was like a guy that was definitely put over in XPW, it was a key, no pun intended, but a key character.
Yeah.
Until
Rob and I didn't see eye to eye.
Of course. But one of the things I just personally thought was like, whoa, we got Gary Key here. He's a recognizable guy and all this. You got this guy, and he's the guy you're going to cover in the mask, you know? Like, I just thought it was ironic because you have, especially out in this part of the country, you have a recognizability and people knew who you were. But again, you had the skills to pull off this, what the character Tool was. But again, also it was ironic that, like you were saying, you weren't necessarily a fan of this style of wrestling, and then you were put in there, and your gimmick, maybe the gimmick was fine, but the psychology you didn't agree with, right? And
I really liked the character.
Yeah, me too.
I thought it could have got over a lot more. And what happened was Rob approached me and says, "Would you do an extreme match?" And I go, "No." And he goes, "Why not?" And I go, "Because I know how to wrestle. I don't want to, you know." And ever since then, I could feel it just. And he was prepping me to take the belt, and that's what he was having. And see, and I'm still undefeated in XPW.
Right.
Still undefeated.
Yeah.
So besides I took my mask, I was never pinned. So I beat everybody. So I'm still undefeated.
Right.
Okay. And I saw the handwriting on the wall because that time Kevin, Kevin was just Rob's little sidearm. That's what it was. And so anyway, I was like, when they put Cypher with me, I think that really split everybody. Because at one time I had a little following, I was over a little bit, and then when they put Cypher, everybody split. And so I'm kind of telling Klein Brock, and I said, well, you know what, that doesn't make sense. I says, here, let's do this thing where we'll come in and Cypher makes me do all this stuff after the match, and I acting like I kind of don't want to do it, and then we'll keep building it up and building it up. And he does the High Hitler salute, and I definitely don't want to do that. And then finally we get to a point where somehow he causes me to lose a match or something, hits me in the head with a chair, whatever, and then I turn around, I come up, pick up, body slam him, hit all his henchmen. Now we can go for another 8-9 months with material because now his army's after me.
Yeah.
I don't like that. I'm like, okay,
No.
we'll still keep confusing the fans then. So,
Yeah.
And so by that time, I pretty much knew it was done deal. And then if it wouldn't have been I know Sabu I worked with Sabu in AWF out of Vegas.
Right.
That's when I first met We had him. We had Terry Funk was there. I guess Terry and Sabu are pretty tight, and then we had Rob Van Dam was there, and so in that night, and Sabu went up to Rob and he's like, "Hey, you can't kill your biggest guy off and job him out." And so then Rob finally came down and said, "Take my mask off." So at that time, I knew it was over with. I knew I wasn't going to get any push, and so I kind of tried to renegotiate more money and everything, and that was the end of that.
All right.
That's what happened on that deal.
And that was during the time where we did Sports Arena, but then we moved to Patriot Hall, the Birmingham High School show.
Yes.
Yeah, with you and Lou Cypher. Do you have one of my questions was any regrettable moments, and the first thing that came to my mind was, like you were saying, Lou Cypher, Lucifer, right? That was Lou Cypher, wasn't it? And he was managing you. But he was beyond controversial because he was like this SS neo-Nazi basically guy, and hinting that you guys were like
I'm not. I understand where you're going. Where you're trying to see if I felt bad going out there doing that with him.
Yeah.
Well, me, I'm not racist at all. I hate everybody equally. So it's. But I didn't. But it's a show. So
of course.
If people can't understand that, then you know what? So, but that's why I kind of come up with that idea. Maybe we can keep that going, and it's obvious I'm not with it.
Yeah.
And he comes out and does all this stuff to me and makes me want to do it.
Right.
And we run that for a while. We build the heat, and then eventually he slaps me, and then I all of a sudden just slam him, and then all those guys come in, and I pound them, clear the ring. Now we can go for another 8-9 months with that. No, don't like it.
Yeah.
So see, that's what I'm saying. It's you got to think storylines. You got to think ahead.
Oh,
and I could definitely see the audience kind of split. It was kind of like some are like, "You're with him."
Yeah.
The other ones are like, and then I'm like, well, we got to do something. We got to go one direction or another.
Yeah.
Because it's just, like that. And then I says, and once we do that, we're going to have material for a good while.
Right.
I could fight the whole army.
Yeah. I know you had a lot of momentum there. When they basically sabotaged that character, you're right. The writing was on the wall.
And this is the thing too. And I've talked to a lot of people about this. And the problem was Rob had the money.
Yeah.
That's the number one thing. But the thing is, you got these guys, they're coming off a big promotion, and they're just waiting for another big deal like Japan or somewhere else where they can make more money. And they're coming to work for Rob, and Rob's a mark. And he was like, let's them take over. So now it's the Shane Douglas show. Now it's this show. Now it's this show. Oh, that guy got a contract, so we got to switch the show. you know. And I told Rob, I said, man, I said, you got you're paying these guys money, and I'm sorry, you're off TV 6 weeks. You're not, you're a wrestler. You're not what you were. I says, you're paying their salaries. So you tell them you're jobbing out to my guy over here. And that's what you do. You got your guy here that's local that you're bringing up. They come in a job for him. Now he's up here.
Yeah.
And that's how you build your talent. You don't,
yeah.
You don't come in and you don't let whoever's the so-called big name take over and make it their show. And
I mean, that did happen, but there were moments where finally they were intermeshing that. Maybe not right away, but like, you know, like they bring in Juventud Guerrera, but then Chaos, local guy, would go over on Juvi. So they did start to do that eventually.
I told you that builds your guy up.
Yeah.
Now that's guy's local. He's your guy, and he's over.
How did you find out getting involved? Because again, you were already established guy in the business. What was the genesis of you getting involved with XPW? Who contacted you? How did you find out? And did you know about it before getting?
I think I contacted. I think it was Kevin Kleinrock.
Okay.
You know, because I had started working for the county of Ventura, and I was, and that's kind of the reason I decided, you know, I'll go under a mask, because, you know, I was working for them, and it was kind of good for me to go under a mask. And I first approached them for just me coming in, and then I had to go do a tryout, and then that's when Rob came in and told. At first, the gimmick was Rob goes, "You see the movie 8mm?" Yeah, Nicolas Cage movie. And I go, he goes, yeah. He goes, we would like bring you in. That's the same character.
The Machine. The Machine.
Yeah, the Machine.
Yeah.
And you know, and the Sports Arena was the first debut of Tool.
Right.
I did not know the name of Tool until that day.
Oh, wow, man.
Even when I was getting dressed in, they still didn't have the name. They were going over all these different names for the character,
right? And
they didn't know, and that's when I found. But the more I thought about the character, the more I liked it. And by that time, I was, and I'll be honest with you, I was out of shape to be wrestling. I mean, compared to my earlier days and the training, I wasn't training like I was. And I thought, you know, okay, this is kind of like a Undertaker character, slow. And that's what I did with the characters. I kind of slowed it down. That way I didn't get blown up in the ring, you know. But that's, and I said, well, this I like this. And then the more I thought about Machine, the character, and all that, and then as we started filming and we started doing the promos, I'm like, wait a minute, this is an S&M guy, you know. So the mask here that I just had, that's the original Tool mask. But once I left XPW, I worked for different promotions as Tool.
Wow.
You know?
Okay.
And I was like, if you guys want to take the name, come here. You can take it anytime you want, if you can. But I had a different mask made. It was more of a lucha libre mask.
Okay. So
it got away from the leather look type thing. And then I had down the pants. So it's kind of like trying to get away from that image. Because I remember my girlfriend, this is when VHS tapes were still around. I was taping my promo. Remember my promo?
Yes.
Oh yeah, I was taping that, and I'm like, I'm taping it. She walks in the room, and she's like, "What the?" Like, this is TV. This is, you know.
This is for those who don't know what we're talking about. With the original vignettes of Tool was like, it was like dressed up like it's in some dungeon. And look, we were working with sharing the office with
Associates.
Yeah, Extreme Associates. So they had talent all the time coming in and out. So we had access advantages because of that, production advantages with all the equipment, the money, but also with talent. Like that's where the Ring Girls came from. That's where all the Extreme, Christy Mist, all the, you know, Jessica Darlin, Lizzie, Jasmine St. Clair, all that. So this was like an advantage that we had. So no exception in the dungeon, in the S&M dungeon. Tool is like torturing this poor girl, beautiful in this thong G-string, like
with a bra strapped to.
And so this was just a vignette. but yeah, I can understand that when you're with somebody, a significant other, a girlfriend, and like you kind of can say things, even me, like on TV when I would go, when the girls would come to the ring and I'd go, oh, you know, like,
yeah.
And I remember my girlfriend at the time, like, why did you do that? I'm like, oh, please, it's just TV, you know?
Yeah, I know. Well, the funny story is remember when we were in, what's that? I think it was Bakersfield, Strongbow Stadium.
Yeah. Strongbow Stadium, yeah.
Yeah. Well, same girlfriend. We went, she came with me to the show and I had her backstage. And, you know, and she was an attractive girl. And she was sitting there, and then somebody came up there and goes, "Are you in the business?" And I'm like, and then luckily, and she was a pretty spark. I mean, she would have,
yeah.
So she came up to me and she was all upset, and she was really upset that somebody would think she was in, you know, their business, not in the wrestling business.
Oh,
yeah. So wow. She didn't take that good at all. And that was the longest drive back to Ventura I've ever had from Bakersfield.
You know, Gary, I think I remember you. I was carpooling with the ring announcer, and we stopped off at on the way to Bakersfield, and we stopped off at Sizzler just past Magic Mountain, and you were there with
Corvette.
Yeah, you were there with her, and we walked
that was her Corvette.
Like, you remember that?
Vaguely.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And that was the same gal, I remember. So
yeah.
I mean, a girl can take that either as a compliment or insulted. So, you know.
She took it as an insult.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, like as a guy, you understand that, like, well, that just means that they think you look beautiful. It could be, you know, but anyway, yes, it's a different mindset, and she took offense, and probably better for it, you know.
Yeah. So I remember that.
Yeah. So Gary, so you're Tool now, and you're okay. So right at the early days. Now, again, you weren't there in the very, very beginning in 1999, but by the time you rolled in, like Larry Rivera, like that's when our television product started in early 2000. So as far as like the fans go that were watching television, that was the beginning of XPW in some ways, right? Unless you got our home videos or came to the live shows in the very beginning. So, So you were there like in the very beginning of XPW TV, and I remember you had matches with Dynamite D, Homeless Jimmy, and all, and like you said, you're undefeated.
Big Dick Dudley.
Yeah, right. Do you have like a favorite opponent in XPW that you could think of?
Yeah, Homeless Jimmy, because you know I Homeless Jimmy trained with me in one of my schools prior to XPW, and so we're in Dynamite D. This is way back in the day. I first met Dynamite D because Jesse Hernandez. We were borrowing Vern Langdon ran Slammer's Gym.
Yeah,
and we borrowed something from him or something for a show for one of our rings. So I had to go over and get it, and then that's when I first met Dynamite D. Okay. But he was in the ring. He was a good base. He was really good to work with. You could tell that and Homeless Jimmy, because I was so used to working with him when he was in my school. That was in El Rio, California, right there in Ventura. And he was going by Rage Dog or something like that back then. But yeah, we trained. So we trained together. So we worked together good in the ring, and I think I worked with Homeless Jimmy, I think 2 or 3 times. And then I think twice I worked with Dynamite D, but they were both, and attitude, everything was great.
Yeah.
So there's probably one of my favorites. In the sports arena with Dynamite D, everything just went off like a hitch. It was great.
It was great. And that match in particular, like, because he would come out as a different 80s character every time, and he came out as Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, and that was the match.
It was literally like, because that was the first. I think that was the first show.
That was the debut of Tool.
Yeah, and it was the first show for XPW in the sports arena, I want to say. But just like to explain to the fans like where the wrestling business was also in that time in the early 2099, it was a hot booming time for wrestling. And XPW was no exception. We didn't sell the place out, but that whole lower bowl, which is a giant area for the LA Sports Arena, was packed. And who knows? Tickets weren't even on sale for the top section. We may have filled it a little bit, you know, but who knows? But
well, you know, I worked for a lucha promotion. Was it? It had to no, yeah. It was before XPW. I worked for a lucha libre promotion out of Mexico. It was AAA.
Yeah. Okay.
No, it was EMLL. EMLL.
Yeah, EMLL.
Yeah. They didn't draw as good as XPW did.
Right.
I remember looking out and I was like, this is like a high school gym promotion.
You know, it's funny because XPW at that time, getting on television was a big deal. You know, when you were either an indie league that, like you said, high school gym, or you were a giant league on television. There really wasn't any in between. So when you have a promotion that gets on television, that has a lot of money, that's bringing in big stars, that's doing things at the LA Sports Arena,
you should have took it over.
Yeah, it did, especially locally. And those fans were rabid. But I remember you in the ring with D Hogan. And like it literally was Dynamite D was doing the Hogan, and it felt like a Hulk Hogan was getting the pop himself that night. Yeah. It was wild. And you see some of the footage. There's a Dynamite D tribute video that myself. Yeah, and then the one moment where he's ripping the shirt off, and you could see like you're standing there, and then the ring announcer and referee Danny Ramirez, they can't help but to smile, and it was just a special moment, man. And the crowd was popping as if it was Hulk Hogan at the LA Sports Arena. I
remember that too, because you know it's too like, you know, I've worked in the Arrowhead Pond, the Sports Arena, Cal Pal, all, you know, with WWF, and you feel that energy of all the people. You just, you feel it.
Yeah.
And yeah, you did feel it there. You know, especially my entrance I built. Remember the two big?
Yeah, I want to get into that. I want to get into that because, and you know what? Right now, okay, so yeah, when you see the big giant X's and the wooden painted silver, look metal XPW, that myself and Rivera actually ended up using the XPW lettering for our TV set. You know,
I built that behind you. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, that. And we had the big letters that we used for the entrance. We'd bring it into the studio. And then we had that monitor between us, and then you built all that. Yeah. And that was the infamous night where Terry Funk and Sabu went fighting out the ring, and then and Sabu or Funk bashed the other's head into it. I think Sabu bashed Funk's head into it. That whole thing came down, and I think they just kind of decided to do that on the fly because.
Go ahead. I got a good story after this.
Okay. And then that thing came down. And again, you got to understand those fans were rabid because there's a reason for that. And not just because wrestling was hot, but when you went to an XPW show, I try to explain people, there was this like element of danger in the air. Like this league doesn't feel regulated. Anything can possibly happen. Mm-hmm. We're going to see girls do whatever. We're going to see violence. And just, you could tell there was no like careful, safe regulation about XPW. So you already had that feeling, that vibe in the arena. Then when you see something like that this giant entrance that isn't like staged, it's really hard, big pieces of like construction that falls down. It's like, what is going on here? You know, and that just set the tone. That one moment, I believe, set, because we used that on the intro, the TV show Forever, the entrance coming down. Yeah. And it gave that whole company. But I remember like afterward, everyone was like, that was awesome. And because you built it, I remember in the back, you're like, God damn it, man, these fools, man. You know how long that took to build, you know, and all this.
Well, every time I see an XPW that's coming down, I smile, because by that time, Rob and I were kind of like, I was figuring out this is not going to go right. And So Rob came to me that night and he goes, how soon can you have this rebuilt? I'm looking at it and I'm like, and I gave him a smoking deal to build it the first time.
I remember that. Yeah.
I smoking deal for him. I think I charged him materials. That was it. So the second time I'm like, yeah, this short notice, this is going to be expensive. So I gave him a quote and he's like, just get it done. So today, you know, I build custom motorcycles and cars, and that's my real passion, my hobby. So I built a lot of custom motorcycles. Well, I have a motorcycle today that I built back in those days, and the whole top of it, from the triple trees, handlebars, the controls, everything, Terry Funk and Sabu paid for that for me.
Oh, wow.
Because I always say, yep, those two bought this for me, because that's what I charged. Back then, billet was very expensive, aluminum. So I tell everybody, says, yeah, Sabu and Terry Funk bought that for me.
Wow, man.
And but yeah, I was hectic. I had to pull some late nighters to get that all redone, because I think we're filming or something within like a week.
Right.
Yeah, and I was like, so I got to work on that, and I charged them going rate.
Good. Yeah.
You know? So
yeah, because ironic that Tool.
Hey, the band Tool.
Yeah, but so I want to talk to you about a moment that I actually just kind of remembered off the top of my head. And you talk about controversial, crazy moments, again, from a company that we didn't have any restrictions, that we weren't censored. I remember, Gary, I was coming into the office one night to do the TV, and they were doing stuff during the day. Of course, the Xtreme offices was open for business. And then when that stopped, the wrestlers came in. And then you guys were doing some promos, and then I came a little later to do the stuff with myself and Rivera. And you know what, man? When I got there, this is the first office in Van Nuys by the airport, wow. and I got there, and it was like there was smoke, there was all this crap, and that was the night where you and Lou Cypher, where the garbage can exploded with Webb inside. Oh. So okay, so just recap for the fans. There was a angle, a gimmick where I don't know if Webb was involved or if Webb was just yeah, I know he was involved physically, but I'm trying to remember a storyline. If it was him, I guess it was, because he came out of the dumpster with all like a cartoon with soot on his face. But what happened was the idea was there was going to be some like a small explosion in this city dumpster that we had in front. And the camera was kind of on, but we weren't like rolling. And you see from the side, there was a giant boom explosion
because all the methane gas.
Yeah, and you and Lou Cypher were standing outside, and you jump up because it wasn't supposed to happen that way.
Not that big.
To the point where car alarms down the street were going off because of the explosion. I can't remember if a window was shattered, but Webb was in the garbage can when that happened.
Yes, and I remember, because as soon as you could watch the video, I'd duck and I'm kind of going away, and I immediately come back and I could just see him rolling out of the dumpster, and he was singed, and it went from like, oh my God, to like unstoppable laughter, because it's just, everybody's okay, his hair singed.
Oh,
but what happened was we were supposed to, it wasn't light is what it wasn't. So I guess they used a little more accelerant, and anybody knows trash is going to make methane, and methane goes to the bottom, and that's what ignited. But I felt the heat on the whole side of my arm.
I don't know how he didn't go deaf.
Yeah. Well, he was singed. I mean, you could see some hair on him singed and stuff. And it was, like I said, it went from like, oh, is he okay? I can't believe that, to just like non-stoppable laughter. And it was, it's one of those things that could have went wrong, but did. Oh. But you know what? And this is Chatsworth, right?
That was Van Nuys.
Van Nuys PD didn't even show up.
Right.
I mean, we sat up, there was alarms going off, and nobody showed up. So
that's a great example of kind of this Wild West mentality. I mean, talk a little bit about that, Gary. as far as like your involvement and you kind of understanding how pro wrestling operates and runs. Then you get into this company, XPW, that is totally pushing the envelope on everything that they were doing. Did you notice that, like, different vibe coming in there and feeling that, especially involved in something like that, being at that office, that Xtreme office? Like, at the time, did it seem to you more, whoa, this is not traditional wrestling, of course, well, but as far as like the mentality of this like renegade attitude that this company had?
Well, I think if it was channeled a little better,
right?
And I'm not talking about the boundaries and stuff like this, but I'm talking about as far as working storylines and knowing how to work storylines. It would have went, with that kind of money and that push, it would have went a lot farther.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but the one thing that really set me off was we'd have the meetings, and I'm driving all the way from Ventura to Van Nuys, which is a good hour if traffic's good.
Right.
And we'd have a 7 o'clock meeting. It wouldn't start to 8:45, 9 o'clock.
Oh yeah.
That's totally I treat wrestling as a profession.
Right.
And if I say the meeting's going to 7, it's good. Vince McMahon wasn't that bad.
Right.
You know, and they're organized. I mean, they have all the agents, you know.
Yeah.
A lot of the agents back then were Jerry Briscoe, George Animal Steel. God, what's his name? I fixed his glasses. He loved me after this. Blackjack Lanza.
Yeah.
Blackjack Lanza. Yeah. He didn't get along with anybody. And then I used to be an optician. I used to fix glasses and do all this. And we were Arrowhead Pond, so we were close to Riverside, which was where my office was when I was working. And his glasses broke on him. And they were typical framing lens, which where I was working, frames. And I noticed them right away. And he's like, oh, my God, I don't have time to. I said, I'll take care of them for you, Jack. I got another story after that about Jack Lanza. But anyway, so I'm like, I'll take care of them for you, you know. So I go in there and I got the keys. I opened up, I fixed, put them on a frame, you know, took care of the money for it and everything, gave them back to them that night. I was the man. I couldn't, and I'll tell you a story about Bob Backlund that helped me because of that story too. But anyway, so I was the man, and he loved me after that. He was everybody, the enhancement talent and the ring crew. He just gave them hell. You know, that's the way he was. He was always mad. But anyway, so after that, I was like golden with him. And then the story was we were somewhere, and back then we had to have one of our guys sit with the audio guy to cue him on the music. And so they're all in headsets, and for some reason the whole dressing room was hot. You know, the whole conversation was being said. So there was another guy, and I was on the mic too because I was ringside, and there was another guy, and they were talking, and Bob Backlund came out, and they were like, who is this guy? Like, dude, this guy was huge back in the day. You know, they didn't know anything about wrestling. So they're saying all this crap about him and everything. Next thing you know, Jack comes out, like after in between matches, goes up right to the tables, like yelling, you know, blah, 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 who's that on the mic? And he knew I was on the mic. So but he let me go. He didn't give me, you know, I didn't really make bad comments, but I did make some comments. I didn't know they could hear everything in the back.
Wow.
He was just like ripping him a new one, you know, and he left me completely out of the deal. So I was like, okay, I fixed his glasses, so I'm cool for now. You know.
Wow. Yeah, I remember when Backlund came back, and that's a good story because he a lot of the public didn't know. There were younger fans, and
yeah, there were younger fans. They didn't know, and these guys weren't fans at all, so they didn't really know.
Right. And that was his initial return in '93 when they put him over as a face. It was like it went nowhere because if you
that was '93 when that happened.
Yeah, and that you just didn't look. You looked at him like he looked like an enhancement talent, and no music, nothing. It was like
it was like cut and dry. You know, that kind of, you know, that stuff worked in the 70s, and he was over back then. You
I
know,
know, it's amazing.
yeah, it's
And that was
amazing how.
also before the MTV Rock and Wrestling, like just before the mainstream got into pro wrestling when he was champ. You know, so they didn't really remember. What was your? I know you talked about favorite opponents, but I guess this would coincide. But do you have a favorite match in XPW that? Oh well, do you have any matches that you can think of that you weren't involved in, and then that you looked at in XPW like, oh, that was a good match, a favorite match that you weren't involved in, that you remember?
It probably one of the Messiah matches, or yeah, he was a really good worker.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really good worker, and him and I, we had that one match. You know,
Mm-hmm.
the last match I worked, it was with Messiah when he pulled my mask off.
Okay, right.
So that was that. You know, I would say some of his matches. You know, he was a hell of a worker. You know, and he would do the extreme stuff, but he still got over doing, you know, his ring ability.
Right.
You know, and he was a good worker. So I'd say
I really agree with you that the Tool character everything was in place. It was set to go over to the point where when you came out, it didn't matter who else was in the ring. I remember, I guess it was Birmingham High when like the Black Army, Big Dick Dudley, everybody was out there, but then you came out and then you could see like it didn't matter the rest of the star power that was there. The fans were like, oh, Tool's here. What's going to happen now? It kind of reminded me of like the WCW days when like the whole NWO would be in there and then whoop, here comes Sting. And like, oh, just one guy made a difference. And that's kind of, and large in a big way, that's what your presence was. And when people knew it.
And that's 90% of it.
That's 90% of it. Exactly.
Because, you know, if you're a wrestler, you got to get over before you hit that ring. If they're not going to wait till you come all the way down the aisle, get in the ring and stand in the middle. As soon as you pass that curtain, that's when you start to get over, you know, and it's all a mindset. You know, it's the same thing with when you're wrestling a match. It's not all about this move, that move, this move, that move. It's you know, there's wrestlers who would snap their head and look up on the fourth row and don't even know who they're looking at, but get more pop out of that than somebody who did a double backflip. Totally. You know, and it's just that they had the audience here and they know how to do that, and that's wrestling.
Yeah, and you didn't say a word. You didn't like, and people might think, well, he was just in a mask. Anyone could have done it. You can think that if you want, but like, for example, there were characters like The Undertaker, for example. Yeah. There have been many like weird characters that just never went over. But if you have the right guy, that's like acting, method acting. If you're a method actor,
that's what people buy.
Exactly. I mean, I remember taking some acting courses and workshops and with a legendary actor by the name of Clu Gallagher. He was the Virginian, and he did all sorts of movies, Return of the Living Dead, Nightmare on Elm Street. And I remember he said, don't react, Kris. Don't even say anything, and don't even move your eyes. Don't move your mouth. Just with your eyes, imagine something sad, angry, happy. Like just do those little things. That is what the audience is going to pay attention to. So it's no different in wrestling. The littlest things go the longest ways. And that's what your character was. It was the mannerisms, knowing when to react, etc. And those little things is what got you over. No different than The Undertaker and all you know, or any actor. You know, like if Robert De Niro is sitting there and he's just not saying a word, but he's saying so much, that's no different than wrestling.
Well, you know, there's a character in WWF that I was really sad that they just killed off. And he actually, you know, Papa Shango, who
I knew you were gonna. I knew you were gonna say that, man.
and he became the Godfather. But
Yeah.
the Papa Shango character, and I'll tell you this too, he jobbed out to me in San Bernardino. He came, worked out with us in San Bernardino, and we did a little match, and he took a pin for me. So that's my, yeah, he jobbed out for me. But he was a hell of, even he was in that brawl for all.
Mm-hmm.
He almost won it.
Mm-hmm.
That guy's a, you know, they call him, they call him Bear, but
yeah,
he was a bouncer at one of the strip clubs in Vegas.
Cheetahs.
Yeah.
Well, wasn't him and his wife were running that place.
I knew he was the manager because I had a really good friend of mine who was a very good friend of his, and he would, you know, I'd keep tabs on him because he trained with us a little bit in San Bernardino when he was
Gary,
going to WWF. He left.
I agree with you. I'm not sure, but I agree with you with his character. And I got to tell you, when I remember I was coming through Vegas. And with my family, we were taking a long drive through the country. And then I stopped. The first night was Vegas. All right. This was in '94. The first night we stop in Vegas, we're staying at the Aladdin. Right when I get out of the car, I see boxing and wrestling tonight. And it was like So the main event was Virgil versus Papa Shango. And so, this is
Virgil. I've worked with Virgil probably 4 or 5 times. I mean,
yeah. But so of course I went to that show that night, and it just pure luck that I happened on the same night. I was staying there for one night, and the main event was Virgil Shango, but you were on that card. And that's when I first really got to know you, because I actually saw you that night in the casino. I was underage and I was gambling when I shouldn't have.
Okay, yeah.
But I remember I saw you, went up to you. Little Tokyo was on that.
Oh yeah.
And I was with my grandfather. Great
Little
story.
Nasty. Yeah, I remember Little Nasty was there. Little Tokyo.
Yeah. And you were there I went at the crap table and you were there. We were talking and you asked me like, so what'd you think of the show? And I was telling you, you know, and because you guys just wanted some feedback and all this. So Papa Shango was there, and
first time I got to meet him. Yeah.
Yeah, I got to meet him. Great, really good guy. Yeah. And I say that about you too. So you one knows the other. But like I remember a few years back, I went to my buddy's bachelor party and we didn't know what we were gonna do. I'm like, hang on, guys, and I called Cheetahs up. I reminded Charles who I was, and I think he remembered not so much XPW, but he remembered Wrestling Society X. He said, and you know Patrick Hernandez, referee? Like, yeah, I know who you are. And what do you need, man? What do you need? I'm like, well, I'm here for a bachelor party. He goes, where are you staying? And he sent the freaking van to pick us all up. And when we got there, free admission and a complimentary bucket of Coronas. He goes, you're in the wrestling business. I'll take care of your fee and your first bucket of beer. So I can't say enough nice things about him.
Yeah, he was really down and humble too. You know, it was like, you know, and I mean, here I am, you know, I'm still training and stuff and working out, and you know, and he comes in and does a match with me and lets me get the pin. I was like, okay, you know, and I really liked his character, Papa Shango. I really like that character. It just, to me, it just got over.
Yeah.
You know? I think what WWF probably thought was, this is competition with Undertaker. That's what I truly thought. I thought maybe they were like, we can't really have two of these characters like this because it's, you know, both. So I think.
Which is ironic because, I mean, Mark Calloway and Charles Wright, Papa Shango, Undertaker were very tight, very good friends outside the business. And they say, correct me if I'm wrong, fans, but that Undertaker was the reason that Shango came in, that they gave him a tryout and a job. So it was ironic that in a way you can use that character as to benefit the Undertaker, but on the other side of the coin, it's like what you're saying right there. Maybe it was too similar, you know?
Yeah. I think that's what it was. And the thing is the way that office runs, you never know. Just ask Bret Hart in his last match with WWF how that office operates.
Exactly.
Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart, their last match. That's how that office operates. You know.
Totally.
And you don't know what's going to happen. You're a number, and if you're going to bring in these seats and these sales, and that's what it all boils down to.
Totally.
That's what they look at. You know, you have, I think in wrestling, you have the shortest, unless you're like a Hulk Hogan or, you're in that status, your shelf life is very, very short.
It is. Yeah.
And it could not even be anything with your performance or getting over. It could be personal, and your career's over with. And that's happened.
Yes.
I've seen that happen. And that's kind of why I decided, I'm just going to treat this more as a hobby.
Right.
By that time, that was before XPW.
Right.
For me, it was get to travel for free and make a little, that was what it was for me at that point, and he's, like I said, you got to eat, sleep that, and hope that nobody don't like you, because
right.
Your career could be over in an instant.
Yeah, I mean, on a personal level, you were always one of the guys that was going to be the last person to like rub anybody the wrong way or push any buttons. So you understood that, and hopefully that you translated that over to some of the younger guys who picked up on that. And,
well, I always, when I ran my schools, I tell the guys, this is, what, this is a business. Those are your co-workers. They're not your enemies. You have the utmost respect for, when I broke into business, I was very fortunate because Jesse Hernandez and then later Billy Anderson, they're from the old school. And when you walk into a dressing room, you basically go in and you introduce yourself to everybody.
Yeah.
And then you shut your mouth. And then eventually, over time, they will let you in. But until that, you're what you are.
Right.
And then I seen the business kind of slipped a little over the last few years. And and it was like, I'm not going to say the guy's name, but I ran a fundraiser. We did it for the boys. We drew really well, but I had this one guy. He was a DJ, local DJ for the AM station, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he thought he was Hollywood. He'd show up late and all this. So he showed up to one of the shows I did late. So I made him put a lucha libre mask on and go stand out on the sidewalk on the main roadway in front of where we were doing the show, holding up a banner saying "Lucha Libre tonight," and so while he thought he was going to be back there with his sunglasses all kicked back, think he's cool, he's out on the so
that's what he needed, though. That's what he needed.
Check. It was like a two. I say, we did one show too, and he's in there, and of course he's a personality. So he's trying to get over on the radio. So I grabbed a fan from the back in the dressing room. It was one of the stand-up fans. And I brought it in. I put it in the ring, and I got in there. And then he's on the ring. He's on the announcing room because we're opening the show and stuff. And he goes, and he looks at me, and he goes, "Why did you bring the fan in here?" And I go, "Because I heard you need some fans." And the audience is like, boom. And he just, so he's just knocking back in his place,
Right. That's awesome. I remember just kind of a similar story. I got booked to do shows out in New York, commentate shows and all that, and down south. And I remember I went to the guy who booked it was like, XPW guy, fan, Mark, or whatever you want to call it. And I walk in there and the guys were like, "Oh, hey, Kris, whoa, good to meet you," all this, that. They knew XPW. And I went into the locker room, and I remember I did what I always do, which a lot of the guys, like you said, it's slipping a little bit, but some of the guys still do it. Whereas I just went around, shook hand. And then one of the kids was like, "Why do you do that? Why do you have to do that? They already know who you are. Like we know you from XPW." I'm like, "You're not gonna. That's a horrible attitude to have."
Yeah.
I just said straight up, like, so let me ask you this. Do you shake hands when you go in the back? He goes, yeah. I'm like, so when you get famous, you're just going to be too good for that? And he goes, oh, no. I'm like, so why you say that about me? You know, and hopefully it made him think about it. I was like, don't ever think that, you know, and because you already have an ego now by saying this. You basically are saying you have an ego and you're just waiting for that fame to like, so you can break out and just freely have this ego that you really shouldn't have. But I was like, you're gonna, like I say, don't take yourself too seriously in the business. Take the business, putting the guys over, the promotion, do your character seriously, but in the back, you better not take yourself too seriously like that. Because like you said, that's gonna advance that expiration date for that shelf life you're referring to.
Right. And I'll tell you, in this business, in the wrestling business, your attitude has a lot to. There are so many wrestlers who just didn't. They were there, and then all of a sudden, because their attitudes just pushed them right out. I mean, you could sit here and just think of hundreds of them that happened to.
Hundreds.
Like I said, don't believe your own publicity. Now, like I told you, Kerry Von Erich said that. He said, don't believe, if you take care of wrestling, wrestling will take care of you, and don't believe your own publicity, if you start thinking what the promotion will let you be, you're not,
and ultimately, if you do that, you should not be able to make fun of marks because all you're doing in that moment is you're becoming a mark. You think this wrestling promotion is real now.
Internet changed everything,
Totally. Honestly, Gary, that's why you and I right now are doing this interview because I
would have to be on a lot of stuff.
Yeah, you and I would never be talking like this if it wasn't for the internet.
No, we wouldn't. And and that was a hard thing too. I remember some of the older guys was like when the internet was out there, because I used to work for Bay Area Wrestling for Woody Farmer. We had Mae Young and we had Magnificent Moolah.
Right.
And we were doing TV tapings out of Bay Area. It was in we flew into Oakland, and it was Hayward. We were doing Bay Area Wrestling out of there, and we could go up there and I'd do a job for whoever I wanted to up there. Then they would come down here the following weekend and do a job for me down here, put me over. So they're putting me over in my territory and I'm putting them over in their territory, and nobody knows. But with the internet, it's like, well, wait a minute. This is what happened last week. It's video, so it changed a lot.
It did, and it also changed, like what you were saying before. Like we were saying, we wouldn't be doing. Tool wouldn't be talking like this. Even myself, I use my real name. But
you get a lot of heat. You would get huge heat from the other guys because you're selling. You're smarter than everybody. Everybody's smart. I'm sorry. It's what it is now.
Yeah, it's kind of just the cat's out of the bag at this point, and
and everybody knows. And I tell people like this. I'm like, I was in martial arts. That's what martial arts. Kempo. I did organized sports. Professional wrestling is one of the hardest sports there is to do, because not only do you have to do the physical part of it and the movements and everything, but you got to read the whole audience. Yeah. And you got to cater to them, and you got to curtail. I mean, everything has to go to them. And that's a talent. And it's just not like if we were just going to go out there and wrestle, that's one thing, but you got to kind of stop and look and say, like, okay, the crowd's going this way, so let's play this a little more, or let's play this a little more, or okay, and it's like some of the best matches I ever had, were like some of the indie circuits. I remember one match particular. This guy his gimmick was from Iran. And, and I was coming out and I was doing like the Marine, the old Marine gimmick. And we get in the audience and I basically take before he has his flag and he's going like this, and the audience is instant heat, and I'm going out there. So I took a towel and I wrapped it around my head, and I just sitting in the corner like this, like with and the audience, then eventually I wound up putting it on, putting it like a diaper. But we got like 15 minutes out of just doing all that, and we didn't touch each other, and and it was. But the people were, we fed off the people, and it was just great, And we did a couple bumps, and we went home.
Right. That's wrestling, like you said, 90% of it.
Yeah, just learning the people, working the people. You get more mileage.
What was to you when you were back in the dressing room, XPW? What was the locker room atmosphere to you? What did it feel like?
I'll be honest with you, it was different than almost every locker room I've ever been in.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of like there were cliques, and I'm not going to go why they were cliques, but you had just about every group you could think of back there.
Yeah.
And, and there were some guys that, it's just most of the dressing rooms you go in, it's like, hey, brother, how you doing? Nice to meet you. Good to see you. And you walk around and everybody's like a big family. But you could I think there were definite cliques there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think some of the ECW guys clicked together.
Right.
But I had known Sabu from AFW or AFW, I believe it was.
AWF.
AWF, yeah, I knew him from there. So and I don't think Terry remembered much of anything, but he was with them too, and that was funny too because I worked with one of my first WWF matches was against Jake the Snake Roberts.
Mm.
Okay. And I'm not going to go into what was happening in the back dressing room, but back then they just looked the other way.
Right.
And I remember come up and you go up and I'm an enhancement talent. So I go up and say, hey, my name's Gary Key. Says, nice to meet you. What would you like to do? And you shut up. You shut up. You don't say anything else. You just shut up. He looks at me and he goes, you know my finish, right? And he's drinking a beer. And I go, yeah. Yeah, I know you're finished. Good. I'll just call it in the ring. I'm like, okay. So when we get out there, he was stiff than hell. I mean, he was literally just, stiff as stiff could be. And then when we get back there, he's just like, kid, you need to loosen up and all, and da-da-da. And the funny thing is Jesse, Jesse trained me and everything, and Jesse's over here. So I could kind of see Jesse kind of moving away, like, I don't know who that is, and I'm over here and Jake, because he had quite a few. So anyway, I years later, we worked on the illustrated sermons for a church in Phoenix. We had Jake the Snake Roberts, Billy Anderson, Jesse Hernandez, Ted DiBiase came there later. And what we were doing was we were doing the sermon. And I came up to Jake and I said, hey, nice to meet you again. And, I actually worked with you. And he goes, I don't remember any of that. Like, I don't remember anything back then. But then another flip side of that is I worked with Virgil quite a bit, and then I did a match with Virgil, and we had this one where he knocked me down, and how he goes to the top rope and he comes off and he's supposed to hit me with his little thing there. Well, I went down, I was doing my spin to come back up, and I noticed that he wasn't set. He was still showboating, like, his time, both of our timings were off. So what I did is I did like a stumble step, fell down, and then started my turn over again. So by the time I did my full turn and come up, he was perfect. So as soon as I did that, we did the match. The match was great. So we get back there and Scott Hall comes up to me and he goes, man, that was a good match, good cover. And he was digging on Virgil too. He's like, good cover, man, good way to do it. And Jesse's like, that's my boy right here. I'm like, yeah, where were you at when Jake was? So I'm like, okay, but anyway, it's just,
well, Jesse's got the wrestling mind. He knows when to step in and step out.
Well, if we got time, I got a good story.
Yeah, that's what we're here.
Well, this is Jesse was kind of like the saving grace, like when we were working with WWF, and after a while, I got to know some of the agents, especially after I fixed Lance's glasses, but anyway, if we started getting heat from somebody for something we did or screwed up or whatever, Jesse could kind of smooth, because everybody knew Jesse. Jesse was the referee.
Yeah.
You know, he was in with the guys, right? So he was kind of like the saving grace. So anyway, Bobby Bradley, and there's like 10 Bobby Bradley, so I'll narrow it down by this is the one from San Bernardino.
Right.
We'd come in there and we were staying in a hotel, and Bobby was on the phone, just calling everybody, just every room, waking us up, he was just, it kept us up all night, you know.
He was ribbing you guys?
Oh yeah, he was the biggest ribber of all. So anyway, we're sitting there, and then me and Jesse, we're kind of like in a guerrilla area. And then all the guys were sitting up in the bleachers, and Bobby was up there. And we come in, and said Uddy, said Justice, said Vicious. He comes walking by, and he's you know, hey, how you doing? You know, he's a guy like that. And then and Jesse, oh, we didn't get much sleep. This idiot up here kept us up. And he goes, which one is he? And then we told him who he was. So Jesse set it up. So I went back and set up behind Bobby, you know, and then Sid comes walking out there, and he goes, who was in room so-and-so, so-and-so? And Bobby didn't say anything. And I'm like, hey, Bobby, that was your room. That's your room, like that. And he comes in there and he goes, I think that was my room. And he's like, what the hell are you calling me last week? And he's just yelling at him, screaming at him, and just telling him, she says, you kept me up. I got to do TV today. I'm going to this. You kept me up. Now I'm not working anything. He goes, who are you working with today? And Bobby goes, I don't know. He goes, you're working with me. Like that. and then all of a sudden, here comes Jesse strolling around the corner, you know, coming up there like that. And Bobby's like, Jesse, like that. And Jesse goes, what's the matter? And he goes, and Sid turns around and he goes, this guy kept me up all night last night, calling my room, hanging up. And Bobby's waiting for Jesse to go, it's okay, Sid. We'll do. Instead, he goes, I know, he kept me up too. And he's like, yelling like that. So they both walk off, and Bobby's sitting there like, oh my God. And if you ever met Sid's like bowling ball shoulders and about 100 miles tall.
Yeah.
So by that time, Bobby's like, oh my God. So,
wow.
You know, that was one of the good ribs they played on him. And
that's great, man. Well, a rib deserves a rib back, I guess.
Oh, we used to. I mean, I look back now, and some of the best times I had was like, not necessarily in the ring or running, but just traveling together and you know, and some of the stuff we did to people and each other, and you know, it was all in good fun. And it was like being in college, but like turned up a notch. You know what I mean? Yeah. So Gary, I want to talk about this too. Like when we were, so XPW closed its doors, but you had left prior to that, of course. Now, when you got the invitation, how did that all work out? Because you were there at the reunion show, XPW Cold Day in Redondo Beach, and that was pretty cool too, because you came to the ring and how was that for you, seeing everybody again, and then the response we got for that show? It was, I don't know, it seemed like a whole new fan base came in.
A little bit.
Yeah. But it was a good turnout and everything. I can't remember how that went down. I wish I would have had a little more advance notice, or because I hadn't been working out or anything in the whole time. You know, I did a couple lucha shows, but I did more managing. I worked. A good friend of mine runs a lucha libre promotion, and I'm in Spanish they say rudo, which is a bad guy, and technical was a babyface. So I was a rudo, and I would go out and just work the fans and stuff, and you know, but I wasn't working out in the ring, and so I wasn't really in shape to work.
Right.
And I was kind of a little, you know, on the fence about doing it, but it was a 10-year reunion. I had to.
Yeah.
So,
right.
So. And so we did that, and you know, it was good. And then there was another show after that, wasn't there?
Yeah, there was that was 2008, but the 10-year reunion show was 2009 in Hollywood.
Okay, yeah. Same thing. You know, I like I said, I wasn't in shape, I didn't really, you know, and from what my gathering was, it was a run-in I was going to do. I wasn't going to do any spots and stuff like that. Which, and I'll be honest with you, and this my friend who runs a lucha promotion, you know, he asked me, he says, Miguel, he says, you want to work a match? I said, you know what? I don't want to go out there in the shape I am and embarrass myself. And he told me, he said, man, he says, that takes a lot of respect. He says, you realize, and there's a lot of guys that don't do that. I mean,
Right.
You realize that you're not in the condition to go out there and give the people what they pay for. You know, you got to realize that. And I wasn't, even for the tenure, I wasn't. Even when we was doing XPW, the first 2000s, I wasn't really the shape I would have wanted to been in.
You were big. I remember like when I first saw you in the early days of XPW, and I came into the warehouse there and I saw you, I was like, I knew who you were and all that. And I just remember seeing, like, maybe you're talking about your cardio and all that, but I remember you had
cardio, but your speed in the ring.
Yeah. And I remember I on commentary, I probably went a little bit overboard, but I really wanted to sell this like larger than life creature, this giant, and the nearly 7 foot tall tool.
Well, I think I commented to Kleinrock about that. I think it was Kleinrock. I go, dude, you know, I have 3-inch lifts and I'm 6'4", so, but I'm walking past the audience.
Yeah, you know? Yeah. So like I remember at one point I really stretched it on commentary. I was like the nearly 7 foot tall monster walking to the ring, and you could see the ringsiders next to him. Of course, they're elevated on the platform next to him. So you know they're hovered above him, and look, this guy is still taller than them. Like I stretched it, you know.
Yeah.
So,
well, you know, they do that because I remember when I first met Hulk Hogan in person, I was kind of like, really?
Yeah,
because he was really lean down at that time, and he was also he's only 6'5", right? I think 6'6" or 6'5" in real life.
Mm-hmm.
And you know they build him a lot bigger, and then you watch all these movies, and you see it, and you watch it, and then you're finally like, really, you know. And it was, so I was kind of, you know, at that point I realized that, you know, TV puts size on you and it puts height on you, and the way wrestling, they always shoot up at the wrestlers, and if you're a referee, you can only be so tall. And
I mean, I wanted to do that. I knew it was a stretch, but I was like, let me see if I can talk this way and work it. But also the fact that your first few matches were with guys the height of Jimmy,
smaller.
And Dynamite D. So it's like, oh, well, maybe this is a perfect opportunity to put him over as being that tall.
Yeah, I think on camera it looked right. It looked right.
Yeah, because they filmed you the correct way in the XPW. They filmed you from way down here by your knees, basically, and shining up, which was great. And
when I come down, I saw that when I come down out of the X's and stuff, and it looked
totally. But I remember the same thing you're saying. Like I was saying all that, the nearly 7 foot tall, but then that same moment you're referring to, like, oh shoot, he's right next to the fans, like walking down the aisle. So that's when I made up, like, well, you know, that the platform that the ringside seats are elevated on, and they're still shorter than this guy, you know.
Yeah. So good cover.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah. It was a stretch, but
yeah, but Big Dick Dudley was a big guy.
Yeah.
Well, Coronas, I think Coronas was under 6 feet.
Talk to me a little bit now that you bring those guys up, Garrett, and yourself.
I know they're both past. They're past, right? They both.
Please, because we just lost Supreme, Felony, Dynamite D's been gone for a while.
Supreme just passed.
Supreme.
He just passed
a few months ago. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I mean, we're getting your genuine reaction, obviously, here, fans, for the first time. I didn't talk to you, so I didn't know that you didn't know. But yeah, Lester, unfortunately, he was sick for a while, and so our thoughts and prayers go out to his family.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that.
And I'm sorry that I'm sorry that you didn't know about it until this moment. But I guess, you know, now that you do, if you don't mind, maybe sharing some memories and if you want to take a second, like I said, sorry, I had to find out just.
No, I will. I was running my school in Simi Valley. And this is the beginning of XPW, and I had a good class out there. We did a lot. We had Fox 11, Channel 2, the Learning Channel came out and did a thing on there. I mean, we had a lot of coverage in LA Times. We were doing really well. And then I can't remember the name of the promotion that all those guys came from. There was another promotion, kind of like a backyard promotion, and they all started coming to my school because, you know, we were training. And then all of a sudden I heard the rumor, oh, this guy's got a lot of money and he's got a ring in his house and all this, and he does porno and they're going to back the company. So all those guys took off. So that's kind of where I first met Supreme.
Okay. All right.
That crowd. And then later on is when I went to XPW. Is when
was that UIWA?
Yes. Yes.
Right. Okay. Because you were with them during the same time I was with Kevin and that crew with ex-ECW, Dynamite D and Patrick.
Exactly. Yep. Right. Yeah, I remember that. Yep.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I worked, you know, and like once again, it was a hobby for me, and so I was working those shows, and yeah, there was I got a picture somewhere, and it's all the guys, and a lot of those guys went to XPW.
Right. Yeah.
And so when I got there, I knew quite a few of them, and then after XPW, I used Supreme on one of my fundraisers. We did a fundraiser for the Children's Auxiliary League in Oxnard. We did it at the ice skating rink.
Okay.
Yeah, and he worked for us there. I think that was the last, because he wasn't on the anniversary shows, was he?
Yeah, he was at Cold Day. Yeah, he was at the absolutely. He was the main event against
not Cold Day in Hell, but
yeah, he was the the XPW 10. He went against Angel, and then there's another Mex PW show. He went against the Messiah, but at the Cold Day in Hell was the legendary death match between him and Necro Butcher.
Yeah, I remember I saw him there. Okay. Yeah, and then I don't remember if I saw him on the last show. That would have been the last time I saw him. So yeah, I was sorry to hear that. That's
yeah, I mean
he's younger than me. Well, everybody's younger than me now, so
well, anything you could share, Gary, about like any like just I don't know if you want to share just a simple story or an encounter with him, Dynamite, Cronus, Dudley, anybody that you can think of that we both knew that lost.
Well, you know, one guy that I came really close to, and I was showing him some airbrushing, was Jake Lawless. I mean, you know, he had a short run, but you know, we kind of got to know each other and kind of stayed in contact a little bit, and he was you know, he's just real, but you know, I don't think his heart wasn't in the business.
I think you're right. Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, it's just his heart wasn't there, but he was, you know, was a good guy. And then
good guy,
Dynamite D, good, nice guy. Like I said, I knew him ever since the Slammer. I wasn't part of Slammers, but when he was with Slammers, and they had Jason Hervey from he was
Wonder Years.
Yes.
Wonder Years.
Jesse Hervey was there, and that's when I first met Vern Langdon and that whole deal. But I was training out of San Bernardino, and we would borrow stuff and do. And Jesse, when I worked Jesse, I mean, a lot of people like wrestling. I did so many things through wrestling. Like we worked on a ton of movies. You know, I've been in 3 movies. We've Jesse worked on, I mean, we worked on Liar Liar, and people don't realize that they filmed a whole week in the Olympic Auditorium for Liar Liar, and they didn't use any of that. They had Lex Luger, they had a bunch of big names there, and they didn't use any of that in the movie.
Wow.
But that was Jesse Hernandez's ring, and we set it up, and I never forget, because they wanted one of us there with the ring all day long. So I call up Jesse and say, hey, let me go down and watch the ring for maybe 4 hours. Maybe, you know, meet Jim Carrey. He goes, I don't even try. I go, what do you mean? He says, well, he's got 2 bodyguards, and if you get 20 feet in front of him, they're going to stop you. And if they don't stop you, he's going to come out and tell you what, you know. And he did that to a guy there. He just, he belittled somebody there.
Wow.
I mean, I won't go into the whole story, But I says, okay, well, that's the last Jim Carrey movie, because the people pay you, they pay your salary, they pay
Yeah,
the
you're right.
tickets, and that's part of the job.
Just like wrestling.
Just like wrestling.
Yeah.
If it's the people that buy those tickets, the people that buy the merchandising, the hot dog, the whole 9 yards,
Totally.
they're paying your salary.
Totally, man.
Those are the people you're there for.
Speaking of Jim Carrey and the Grand Olympic Auditorium and the wrestling ring, I was actually as an extra in Man on the Moon. Was that Jesse's ring then too in 1998? I want to say they were filming it. Do you remember that? If that
Olympic Auditorium?
Yeah, it was Olympic Auditorium.
Yes.
That was Jesse's ring? Wow. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it was. Yeah, Jesse. A lot of people don't realize. I mean, body slam grunt, lighter layer.
Yeah.
There was a Japanese American Tiger mask.
He had a big role in that body slam movie where he was like on the floor fighting when Ric Flair was there and all that stuff, and at the sports arena.
Yep.
Yeah. Body Slam the movie with Dirk Benedict from the A-Team, and Roddy Piper, the Samoans, everybody was in that movie, and Jesse was a big part of that, and he's quite the legend, and
I'm telling you should bring him on the show.
I'd love to.
So many stories, and people don't, and that's another thing. A lot of guys in the wrestling business, they wrestle. Well, I was doing all kinds of other stuff that spun off of wrestling. We were working on these movies. We were actually we did some. I worked on American Tiger Mask. I did 2 matches in there. I just recently, it was probably about 7-8 years ago, I worked on Killjoy.
Okay.
Killjoy 1, 2, 3, 4. I worked in there. I did some, some fighting scenes in there. But this whole wrestling business spins into different avenues, and you got to take them. Because sometimes, like I said, if the wrestling's not paying, something else was. And I made good money up, and even like it actually got me into like working as a bodyguard. I did that for a while too, and there's just so many avenues off this business that you got to keep your eyes open, and the guys that are struggling and stuff, and
it's only a natural transition for something to come offshoot from wrestling. Because of XPW, there was a link to a film producer by the name of Bill Osco, who was a giant in the 70s and 80s, and he revamped one of his movies into a play. And long story short, he saw me, we got to know each other, and I moved to New York and I did a Broadway show. That wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for XPW. So you're right.
One door closes, another one opens.
Totally. So Gare, before we wrap up here, and thank you for sharing. Anything else? Some of the guys like Cronus or Dudley, before we go to the next question. Any stories?
I'm really sorry to hear about their passings. I read about their passings, and I talked to him a little bit. Dudley seemed, he was a pretty down to earth guy, and I guess he told me, he actually told me, he said, I got to make my mark here in the next 5 years in this business, and and unfortunately he passed away. So, but this business is just, I have lost so many friends. Lewis started for Louis Spicoli, and he was Rad Radford. He actually, as he was breaking out, I was starting training in San Bernardino with Billy Anderson, and it's just so many people I've known that, have passed away in this. And it's like you just Google, wrestlers dead before 40, and it's a
it's unbelievable
business.
Yeah.
And hopefully it's, it'll start turning the other way.
Yeah.
It's just, but the people I've met and the opportunities I've had through this business, just, it's been a good ride. So,
completely.
Even though I didn't make it to the top, but just the things I saw, it was a great gig.
Yeah, and it's kind of, maybe that ties into what you're saying, like when you don't, a little bit here, when you don't say, don't take yourself too seriously. Well, whether you were over, made it big or not, it's the understanding that we're all the same in the back. And so that run, you can say you enjoyed it just as much as the guy on top on the
Exactly.
product, whatever, you know. So that is something that I always cherish too, just the experiences, right? What do you look at, Gary? You know, of course you have the good, bad, and the ugly, and the ups and downs of XPW, for yourself, for the company itself, for the direction. But when you think of like shows at the LA Sports Arena, you know, the Grand Olympic Auditorium, being on television, worldwide home video, and all these things, and the money behind it, and the fan base that we had, like you said, when you and Dynamite D were in the ring and all that. What would you, and also being that this was SoCal's basically baby, this was its league, right? Because everything was always on the East Coast or in the South. But what would you look at now with that fan base and the era that we were operating within? What good, bad, ugly, what do you think of the legacy that it left in wrestling of XPW?
Well, you know, I just think that with the money and what was going on, they could have rivaled ECW.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And I just think the office kind of took it in too many different directions. But other than that, I mean, the fan base was unreal for an indie promotion, you know, draw like they did. And, you know, it's just, but like I said, I just felt if, you know, it's kind of like if they would have listened, or maybe, you know, not let the stars direct them certain ways, you know, then I think, you know, they could have rivaled ECW.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me ask you something before we close out here, Gary. Kevin Kleinrock, the Vice President of Operations, the very esteemed, the prestigious, and the honorable Mr. Kevin Kleinrock. That's what he wrote down, how he wants to be announced as. No, I'm just kidding. But because Kevin and I joke around, because when I first like was a kid and going to these events, he was, oh, Kris, you were that obnoxious fan, blah, blah, blah. But you have a little story about Kevin Kleinrock when you were working shows at the LA Sports Arena back in the day, long before XPW.
I remember you were very respectful, you know.
Thank you.
You
hear that, Kevin?
And I didn't have any heat with Kevin.
I know.
No, and I'll tell you the way I know Kevin, I remember Kevin, was because of Billy Anderson. Billy Anderson, for some reason, I don't know what it was, did not like Kevin Kleinrock at all. And it was, and we call him Mizarks, which Mark Mizark is, okay, you know. Anyway, but he was a super Mizark, you know, and it was kind of unfair for me. Or it was not right for me, but I kind of developed heat for Kevin because of Billy. You know, I figure, well, if Billy don't like him or something, I don't know what I would love to. Hey, if you ever talk to Kevin, find out. Well, me and Billy are in contact all the time now because I moved to Phoenix. I'm north of Phoenix. I'm surprised.
Okay.
Billy lives in Phoenix, and actually, superstar Billy Graham lives in Phoenix too, close to Billy. So as soon as all this crap dies down, we're all going to go out and have lunch together. And I met Superstar through Billy Graham. I met him through we were working for the church in Phoenix, and we were doing the illustrated sermons of wrestling, the whole 9 yards. Anyway, but find out from Kevin, or I'll ask Billy, or you have Billy on the show. Billy has wrestled since the early 70s. And he trained Sting, he trained Ultimate Warrior. The guy knows the business. And I think there's a lot of people out there that want to know the old school wrestling. And now we can expose it because it's already exposed.
Yeah.
You know, and I remember you would get death threats if you and I had this conversation 30 years ago. So
I know. Even during the days of XPW, the early days of XPW, that case,
kayfabe.
Yeah, that was still, I try to explain this to people, like No, that was still a thing. It was shortly after that it kind of faded away, but it was
the internet exposed it all.
Yeah,
you know,
but
we had fans coming up speaking Carney.
But it was a big deal at that time to, like, again, you were Tool. You did the vignettes. We did the shows at the LA Sports Arena, and then we go into the office and you'd see Gary Key with the bag with his mask right there. That was like a big deal. Like, we're on this side of the curtain, folks. We get to see it. That was still kayfabe time going on. During
well, you know, I worked on the Mil Máscaras as a man of thousand. You know, he's a Hulk Hogan in Mexico.
Yeah.
And Santos, same thing. I worked on some shows with those guys. They showered with their mask on.
Right.
In Mexico, that mask is your identity.
Yeah.
It's big time.
Even though we're doing this now, I honestly, personally miss that a lot. I miss being in the back and being like, there's a difference from being on this side and that side of the curtain now.
Big time. Yep.
I miss that so much, man. I really do.
It's
because if you think about it, that is the foundation of professional wrestling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, really, what else is more rooted in what wrestling means than that concept?
Yeah, even like I said, I was doing valet. I was working as a manager for my friend not too long, a couple years ago.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there was all lucha libre Spanish, and we work a gimmick. I'd come out with my Trump 2020 shirt on, and and I'd have a bucket with me, and the bucket said "Donations for the Wall." Nobody spoke a word of English, you know, and
that is like some serious Roddy Piper La Cucaracha heat right there.
I had super heat.
Yeah, that's the famous, Roddy Piper at the Grand Olympic wants to apologize to all the fans, the Mexican fans, and so now he's going to honor them by singing the Mexican national anthem. He starts singing La Cucaracha,
Yeah.
And that's that heat we go with. And a friend, one of my best friends, Danny Ramirez, referee. We were doing a lucha show, and a wrestler, African American, black guy, went out, and then the fans just all of a sudden like started shitting on him because of his race. Right? It was like, that's the lucha audience. They can be very unpolitically correct, but he came to the back and he was like, "Man, that was messed up." And I remember Danny was right there. He goes, "What are you talking about? That was messed up. You run with that. Don't take it personally." They would have said that to any black guy, right? And he's saying, like, as a Mexican or whatever, like, if they hate me, like, you either run with it or you don't. It's just a wrestling audience. You don't have to make a political statement here. You're here to wrestle. You can make a political statement. You go protest, but here, get over with that. Just try to get over it. Or
I don't put anybody. I'm not. I hope people know that this is a show. And
right.
My job is to get heat out there.
That's it. So this young kid, like, he goes, "Oh, okay," and or I went out there as this the lucha audience, like, the White Devil is here to ring announce or whatever. Like, you run with it. You just run with it, man. And
they give it to you. But just make sure you got security to take you to your car.
Yeah. But honestly, none of that really matters, because once the show's over, it's like the fans forgot about everything they were chanting, and they're shaking your hand and so it's just part of the show for them as well.
Yeah, and the good thing too, and one thing I learned here recently in the last few years was working as that in that capacity was you learn how to put them down, but also put yourself down at the same time.
Oh, totally.
So it's kind of like, you do something, but then you give them something to laugh at you about,
And to add to that, Gary, don't take yourself too seriously. And that's what Danny was basically telling that kid, where, making fun of the racial stuff, African American. He's basically telling them right there, you're either going to take yourself seriously in this business or you're not. You got to pick one right now.
Yeah, I agree.
That's it. You can say that was messed up. Okay, fine. I agree with you. But now what are you going to do with it? You're going to run with it or not? Make your choice, right?
Yeah.
So
Cool.
Well, Gary, my friend, I just before we close here, I just want to thank you very much. And I always tell people, man, like, you know, we've worked with a lot of good guys in this business, but you really are top of that list, man. You're always been very humble, very respectful.
I appreciate you.
Yeah, you really
you.
well, it's the truth, man. And especially, and again, I want young people to hear this. Like when we first met and when you came into XPW, like you said, it was toward the tail end of your career. So you were already established. I knew you before I got into the business, who you were, and knowing that was the case, yet you were still like humble, respectful, and all that. Just remember, guys, that's how it works, and that's why this guy here, not just from me, but has that reputation as a guy you can trust, a guy that's dependable, a guy that is just nice to be around, you know, pleasant, and also can teach you a lot in the business.
And life's the work.
Yeah, this is one big, life is a work. We are all writing the story of our lives. Everybody, yeah, we all make choices. Nobody's a victim. We make the choice. So for writing the story, we might as well write a good one.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, man, I can't think of anything better on that note, as deep and insightful. So thanks for sharing that, Gary.
Right, brother.
Dude, thank you, bro. It's really a joy. And when all this is over, you know, feel free to hit me up. You're more than welcome to come back on the show. And just if you're ever in Cali or if I'm in Arizona, I'll definitely hit you up. And
definitely look me up. You're out in this part.
Definitely, my friend. Well, ladies and gentlemen, could we, Gary, before we go off the air, can I really quick just also thank Tool for I don't know if he's still there, but I'd like to just tell him, because we barely got a chance to talk to him. He's a very interesting individual. Okay, you want to go grab him? Hey, Tool. Hey, there you are. Hey, Tool. I want to thank you too, along with Gary, for being on Xtreme Memories here on YouTube. Did you have a good time? Huh? What the hell? Oh, God. Well, Tool, I thank you for all the insight you've had. That knife looks to be like a very, very sharp knife. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Kris Kloss. This has been Xtreme Memories, the Wrestling Chatter channel. My guest, the very mysterious Tool. Good night, everybody. God.
Thank you for watching Xtreme Memories, hosted by Kris Kloss. He's dropping new episodes every month on the 15th and 30th. You can be the first to tune in by subscribing to the Wrestling Chatter channel right here on YouTube. See you next time.